is like an adrenaline rush. Manhattan is overwhelming, the heart and capital of the world. New York is booming. More and more people come here to witness it, this living and breathing monster of a city. Some come to work and live here, and stay. Midtown Manhattan around Times Square is the business center of New York. Midtown sucks in the commuters before spitting them out via one of the 4 metro lines that race south towards Wall Street and the financial district. Midtown Manhattan is one of the most built-up areas in the world. But Midtown is also feeling its age, which is why it's time for Manhattan to renew itself. But how? How do you rebuild a city that's like a live wire? How do you do open-heart surgery on a living, breathing metropolis? Central Park. Without it, Manhattan could not exist. It's an oasis of deceleration and tranquility. Children play, birds sing. You don't have either in Midtown. Everybody has always wanted to live here, and that's why it's always been one of the most expensive addresses in the world. Since 2010, apartment buildings in Central Park have also been growing upward, more than 300 meters high, competing with Midtown for air serenity. Following Park Avenue southwards to the right of Central Park, everything here is expensive. Manhattan's largest underground junction, Grand Central Station, is on 42nd Street. This is where the renovation of Midtown East begins. A new office tower is being built, which at over 400 meters will be the tallest building in Midtown. Some of the commuters are lifted straight up into the air, while its base, its foyer, belongs to the city, providing an additional exit for the commuters who get off at Grand Central. James van Klemperer is the chief architect of the One Vanderbilt Tower.
It is quite literally, not just in figurative sense, the doorstep to the city. When you come out of Grand Central on a ramping system, you emerge, and that is your toe touches this site. That means 75,000 people an hour at the peak load time will be flowing at this building. So the audience is intense and extreme.
The number of commuters will double in the next few years as a new tunnel will create additional connections from the east to Manhattan. Up to 150,000 people will get off here per hour. It will replace private car traffic, but will also create new challenges.
What this new building allows is a heart bypass. In other words, you'll be able to not only come through the station, but go another 50 feet, another 30 meters into this new building. The existing building would be overloaded. Its staircases wouldn't function. People would trip over each other. You already bump into each other in the main hall, which is kind of exciting. It's fun, but you really would bump into each other in less useful ways.
With the foyer, the city regains public land, while in return, the investor can build higher. The fact that a privately financed building would give up its space for the benefit of the city is an absolute novelty for Manhattan. And the new building shows its reverence to old Manhattan as a landmark. Instead of it obstructing the view of Grand Central, it acts as a transparent veil, elegantly framing the station.
Because of this operation of visually liberating the bottom of the building of Vanderbilt, of creating this diagonal slice, we can now see 75 feet back into the facade of this building because we've cleared a path for the eye.
Gradually, other high-rise buildings in Midtown will follow suit. Old and too densely built-up properties in the surrounding area will be gutted and renovated, and existing office space partly demolished.
This project is part of a program of New York City planning to reestablish more density and more vigor for this neighborhood, because a lot of the older buildings, office buildings in the 1950s, were deemed to be ecologically unsustainable. Bad walls, low ceilings, mechanical systems that didn't work. They gave extra area to the buildings so that if there were something that were outmoded, it would be worth the developer's time to tear it down and put up a bigger building. So this is called the East Midtown rezoning. So there's sort of city planning is allowing this and that to happen at the same time. Just interesting.
A new generation of high-rise buildings is intended to counteract negative climate conditions in the city with the use of new materials and intelligent systems. The tallest buildings are to be visible signs of urban progress in the future. This project is part of a plan that is responding to new urban requirements. An increasing number of people mean more spaces needed at flashpoints. Sidewalks need to be made wider with more public space.
Have this sort of form of a building that tapers like this, and it also opens itself up at the bottom, and then from there it unfolds to become the tower like so. The top of the building should not be an opaque, solid, impenetrable mass, regardless of the shape or form. It should not be a completely reflective glass. It should not be a solid. It shouldn't be something that would have a use that could only be occupied by those who pay to rent the building. But that it should be accessible. It should feel public.
KPF stands for Kohn, Pedersen and Fox, one of the largest architectural offices in the world. It has erected skyscrapers in almost all of the new big cities in Asia. The new office tower will change the skyline of Manhattan. It will be visible from everywhere. This building will also be a visible sign that Midtown is experiencing a renaissance, better, more modern, and meeting the demands of a 21st century metropolis.
Although my father came from Germany, my mother came from New York, and her father worked across the street from this site. And he would commute every day from a house in Connecticut, which I live in now, to the same station and would look at this site. And so there's a kind of symmetry of experience, understanding a generational kind of a linkage to this place that is quite interesting to me.
The One Vanderbilt Tower can be seen growing upwards from Bryant Park. Surrounding the small green square, Midtown rises, stony and massive. Everything is built up. From here and nearby Times Square, the express trains race south to the second extremely built-up business center, the financial district. In order to relieve Midtown and the financial district, the city had been looking for a location for a new business center and concentrated on partially derelict industrial sites along the Hudson River on the west side of Manhattan. The first section of Hudson Yards was opened in spring 2019. By 2025, 13 skyscrapers will be touching the clouds here. Hudson Yards number 10 was the first of the newly built skyscrapers. It's where Dan Doctoroff has his office. He was Michael Bloomberg's deputy and played a major role in the plans to rebuild Manhattan.
So this, for me now, has been about a 23-year-old dream. The origin story is back in 1996, I came up with the idea that New York ought to host the Olympics. And as I was developing the plans, where would you actually place the venues? Where would the competitions actually take place? It forced me and my team to really look at New York City and kind of where land was available, but also step back and say, how does New York actually transform itself into a 21st century city as opposed to looking backwards as a 20th century city?
After the Olympic bid failed and the demand for new office space grew, the Hudson site was reconsidered. Initial plans for Hudson Yards now included the proximity to Manhattan's second major hub, Penn Station. The area to be developed was beyond the tracks where trains are parked outside of rush hour. The prices would have risen dramatically. But then two things helped to ensure that the building could begin. The tech boom fueled the American economy and positively affected New York as well. Meanwhile, demand for modern office space and apartments in Manhattan grew as well. Hudson Yards was now to become the first city district to be consistently mixed use, a model for the new city of the 21st century.
I don't think that it's any different around the world that when a city is reinventing itself, as Paris did at the time of the Exposition, or that London did at the time of the Crystal Palace, is that it's a moment of transformation, a sort of imaginative leaping off point to reinvent the cities. So Hudson Yards as an idea was actually another idea that came first, which was the idea that a stadium would become, a grand public element would become the center of a whole new district that would grow around it. And it would be a residential neighborhood that was moving west and that would be tied to the east-west spine of 42nd Street through Hudson Boulevard. That was the original idea.
Kenneth Lewis had been involved in the planning of the new Manhattan West from the beginning. The new city within a city should offer everything that Manhattan has: offices and apartments, shops, restaurants, supermarkets, hotels, and culture. A very dense and highly developed new city, but embedded in green spaces and with lots of public space. In dense urban centers around the world, skyscrapers are the most effective form of housing. They concentrate technology and people in self-sufficient microsystems. Eugene Cohn and William Pedersen designed 3 of the skyscrapers in the first phase of building for Hudson Yards.
I think what made Hudson Yards special was that 2 things, is that area of the city nobody gave a thought to. I mean, I have to admit, I would go there and say, who would want to live here or be there? You know, it was kind of a no man's land. Railroad tracks and buses stored there and trash stored. I mean, nothing special. And I put a team together, and they worked for 2 weeks without going home. They just stayed and showered and did everything at the office, and we finished this project for them so they could have the master plan approved. And then we started doing the buildings. And today it is like the premier place. I can't get over that the major tenants are moving there. BlackRock and all these high-end banking companies want to be there.
William Pedersen designed the highest tower, giving it its unique shape. He wanted it to be unmistakable and not only shape the new quarter. Right from the start, Hudson Yards was not intended as a new district on the west side, but as the new Manhattan per se.
You know, there's no question about that. There's no urban precedent for the scale of Hudson Yards. You know, it is just without precedent. And the challenge was, how do you make that scale into something that's unique, that has a tremendous energy to it? And it was my belief that buildings of this scale need to gesture in a very powerful way. But I've always thought of urbanism like a cocktail party. You know, if you get some noble character standing off in the corner refusing to talk to anybody, you know, you don't have a very good cocktail party. What you want are people talking to each other. And that's just the same with buildings. You know, buildings need to talk to each other.
You have been waiting eagerly to check out this shiny new development. Like many people, well, today is now your day. The shops, the restaurants officially open to the public.
Today, we are a new neighborhood where the West Side all comes together. Today, we created a new model for the world to see a neighborhood development that encourages sustainability and resiliency. Today, we created a dynamic hub of creativity and innovation.
Thousands came after the opening to inspect the new shopping mall. From here, you can see the large central spatial sculpture, the vessel, which dominates the new plaza. It's still a neighborhood under construction. 65,000 people will work here soon, and many will also shop here. By the time Hudson Yards is completed in 2025, 4,000 new apartments will have been built.
Hudson Yards is critical to New York's future for many, many reasons. One is we always hope New York will grow, right? And we have to find the space to accommodate growth. Second, I think it forms sort of a wonderful example of what mixed-use development can actually be, which is, we think, the future of urban life as we look forward.
Hudson Yards is not just a neighborhood and not just an investment that will pay off. It also has a competitive factor. Nowadays, cities compete worldwide for the best corporate headquarters, while companies compete for the best creative people. And they no longer want to work in cramped old offices with a poor environmental footprint. That's why a mixed district that can offer everything that urban culture has to give today is a decisive factor in the global competition.
It's a city that has a street life to it that's different than the models in the 70s. And that's slowly going away, which is you go into a sterile environment and you have the mall, or you have a tower that you walk into and you go up and you do your job, and then you come down and you go out and you leave the city. It's also a model that doesn't displace people. It does not cause gentrification because there's no gentrifying that's happening there. It's being taken down and replaced with at least 30% of affordable housing throughout the whole population. This is a model that we believe in. In fact, we think the number might need to be higher. Affordability is a different idea in New York than it is in many places, just because of the cost of things.
This is the problem of urbanization in the 21st century. The more attractive a district, the better the urban planning, the more expensive the plots and apartments become. But no city is interested in homogeneous districts only for the wealthy, not even Manhattan. To avoid this, housing needs to be subsidized at affordable prices. A vital city needs diversity in all areas, architecturally and socially.
A landscape architect will engage in the many, many systems, visible and invisible. So an awareness of transportation, but also an awareness of the position of the sun, of the contact with horticulture, of the prevailing winds. Where is it pleasant and unpleasant to gather, to be, to reflect? So when you start to imagine the flows from the subway coming into the site, the flows from the Hudson Yards coming into the site, people coming from the west, people coming from the west. When we see the landscape of the city as one living body, completely interconnected, we start to care for it in a different way, and we engage with it in a different way, and ultimately, we design it in a different way. So what you start to have is, I would say, a contemporary labyrinth that you could walk on for hours and continue to explore the Hudson Yards and its gardens, its plazas. It's very much like the Campidoglio of the 21st century.
The architect Liz Diller on the roof of her office opposite the new business district on the Hudson. She and her partners have created 3 significant elements for this new district. Their history, like hers as an architect, was strongly influenced by the success of the redesign of the High Line.
When we did the High Line, we thought optimistically 300,000 people would come. And we talked about how important it was to have a green space in this area that has very, very little green open space. And this area was totally in decline after the meatpacking district was dissolved and all of the small businesses were going out of business. And so there was nothing but a sea of open parking lots. And so we felt that almost anything we did to the High Line could improve things a little bit.
In the late 1990s, a citizens' initiative prevented the demolition of the decommissioned High Line tracks and collected ideas for public use. The first section was inaugurated in 2009, and this initially inconspicuous walkway quickly became world famous. The effect was that this industrial wasteland lost its aura of dirt, drugs, and crime, and became attractive to New Yorkers. Only then did it become clear that the Hudson Yards project could be a success.
We never imagined. In 2016, there were 7.5 million visitors to the High Line. And the property around the High Line, which was without value before, now kept getting flipped and flipped and flipped, and the value continued to increase, and now it's some of the most expensive real estate in New York.
The High Line runs from the south directly towards the office towers. Then it turns left and encounters the new cultural landmark, the Shed. The Shed was designed entirely in the tradition of other spectacular cultural buildings that catapulted neglected districts into the present and the future.
When we set aside a parcel of land, the parcel we thought was going to be the most valuable in the entire New West Side for a to-be-determined cultural institution, we as Mike Bloomberg and I and the rest of us in government at the time established two criteria for actually what this institution should be. One was it had to be different than anything else in New York and ideally in the world. Not an easy standard when there are already 1,200 cultural institutions in New York City alone.
The most striking thing about the Shed is its movable outer shell that spans the stage. It allows performances, operas, and pop concerts to be spectacularly turned into open-air events. New York has never seen anything like this before.
The Shed is inspired in a way by industrial infrastructure, and the feel of that space is something that should be uninhibiting to artists. It's fairly raw, so we're exposing everything, the structure, the mechanical system. There's just a skin. It consists of 3 levels of galleries and 1 additional space that's used for events.
The dimensions are impressive. The outer shell arches up to a height of 40 meters. The finished building looks futuristic, like an airport hangar, which then mutates into an open-air stage. A new district that wants to attract people from all over the world needs such landmarks. They make the new city unmistakable and contemporary, without being derivative. Something which those who work and live here can be proud of.
I would say muscle and bone, and there's no fat at all on this project. So the idea is to make a very, very simple space that's rescriptable by many people into the future.
The inside of the concert hall shortly before the inauguration. The room has this immense height so that the sound can fill the entire space. The fixed structure under the outer skin is on gliding rails and is variable. It has movable walls and can thus adapt to the most diverse requirements. Exhibitions or performances can take place singularly or at the same time. The aim is to offer space and a stage to all forms of art in this new building, which is not a museum, not an opera house, not a theatre, but everything at the same time. A home for culture in the 21st century. That, at least, is the aim. original revival of the west side of Manhattan began in the meatpacking district, about 2 kilometers south of Hudson Yards. The former halls and warehouses that belonged to the slaughterhouses had become superfluous, so artists and studios, then galleries and designers and fashion shops followed. The former meatpacking site became attractive. Then one of the 4 big museums decided to leave Midtown.
I came here and said, that's a place, perfect. It was a big mess. The meat market was still there, with the smell of meat still there. I actually watched up and I saw this to be let, this office. So I said, fantastic. The site is this, the office is that. And so we took this office. This is where we have the eye line. The eye line is there. And here we have the stair going down. And here we have all the machine. Well, and this is the big room. That's a big room. That's a big room. That's the biggest space for art in New York. This is the building. But that space there is completely transparent. So the building is lifted from ground to allow people to come. That's what we call accessible public building.
Directly opposite the office that Renzo Piano set up in Manhattan is the entrance to the High Line. And directly behind it, the Whitney Museum for American Art, on stilts, like a boat in a dry dock. A museum ship with many superstructures and bridges and spectacular terraces.
When we worked with Renzo Piano to design this building, we said we wanted a building that people would look into and know what was happening in this building, that they would have a sense of art connecting to life and life connecting to art. So that when you're in our galleries, you often look at an artwork and you see it in relationship to the city. And you understand that art doesn't come about in isolation. It comes about as part of the process and the fluidity of life itself.
You understand that when you look west here, across the Hudson River and New Jersey, you can see the rest of the world. You can see the rest of America. If you look carefully, you see Los Angeles. I'm joking, of course. But you understand immediately that this building got to have two faces, the east and the west. The east was in dialogue with the rest of the city, and the west in dialogue with the immensity of the country on the other side, and the water.
The Whitney incorporates in its concept what all modern cultural institutions want to be in the digital era. A platform on which all possible forms of culture are presented. Exhibitions as well as film and theatre screenings, lectures, performances. A museum post-museum, a place where you can simply pop in. You could say that this concept and this place served as the model for the Shed in Hudson Yards.
It was always about looking forward, not looking back. And so that spirit is most what defines the Whitney today, is we work very closely with artists. Artists often work in the galleries to make their work. Artists have a presence in everything that we do, and historically that has been the case. For us, the motto of the museum has been for many, many years, wherever the artist goes, the museum must follow.
3 spectacular bridges connect Manhattan with Brooklyn. This was where artists moved to at the end of the 20th century. First to the other side of the East River, then to the then infamous Williamsburg. Really contemporary art hardly ever happened in Manhattan anymore. At the tail end of the 20th century, the MoMA, the Museum of Modern Art, took over the PS1 gallery. Art happening at a former primary school. This is the spring biennial opening, where only contemporary artists are shown, the well-known and the lesser known. The concept of curators like Adam Weinberg is to bring artists back to Manhattan, and not just to fill the museum of the 21st century with spectacular exhibitions, but to make it a vibrant artistic place once again. And that's the west side of Manhattan, So the choice of location for the new Whitney was no coincidence.
I mean, the cities are becoming larger, more densely settled, and more expensive for people. And that's one of the challenges of museums, especially contemporary museums, because you need to be in a city where artists can afford to live. You want to be in a city that is not only being responsive to people who are well educated and are in the know, but people who might not necessarily be in the know about art. Our job is to be as democratic as possible and to reflect the culture in a larger sense.
In the digital era, perfection and glamour are everywhere, which means that real places where the here and now can happen are all the more important. Kat's Delicatessen is, and has always been, the place in Soho to get your pastrami fix. What Manhattan has always had going for it, compared to other metropolises, is its sheer diversity of everyday life, density and depth. So many cultures, so many routes, compressed into a manageable couple of square miles. So much vitality and adrenaline. That too is an indispensable part of a 21st century city. The Hudson Yards project extends from the southern tip of Manhattan across the meatpacking district and along the Hudson River. From there, heading north, you reach West Harlem, where New York's most important university has initiated a master plan for the 21st century. Columbia's medical school is tucked between residential buildings in Washington Heights. Liz Diller and her team also won this commission, and her design became the overture for the new Brain Center in Manhattan's north.
It was an extremely inefficient footprint that we decided to use inefficiency as actually productive. So how do we take this vertical space and maybe make double height and triple height spaces and a network of spaces that are all interconnected? We wanted to make a building that has many different attributes and many different spaces, all collected through this vertical network, that you can find the place that's most comfortable and most interesting for you to be in at any time of the day, any day of the week.
Universities today are also involved in a worldwide competition for the best minds and an environment in which they can also get the best teachers. And the best teachers are drawn to modern institutes with modern facilities. Liz Diller's design is like a signal for a new beginning. Science and a constant process of knowledge sharing in a building created precisely for this purpose.
Basically, a series of spaces that are linked together to make platforms, to make very kind of unusually carved spaces, shaped, that are looking in every direction. This is a place for 300 people. This is a place for, let's say, 30 and 20 and 10 and 5 and 1 and 2. And you can go from the ground all the way up the building and experience these spaces, stop, if you will, or move through activities, end up on the top with fantastic views. This could be a condo, but it's actually a space for medical education.
From science comes progress, new cures and new products. This requires technologies and systems that may be available on one of the floors of Hudson Yards. The proximity of the sites is a competitive advantage. This can also have a positive impact on the economy and culture, and thus on the future of an entire city.
For us, the exercise was really one of how can you actually make a fluid space that's very generous to students, that's actually in and out of publicness. It's not classically divided with a door and concentration is focused in one place. Maybe there's distraction everywhere, but a space where a new generation of students could actually be very productive and creative. And so that was the response.
Liz Diller's team's design was the first of the new buildings for the new Columbia University. The actual new campus will be located about 4 kilometers south, close to the Hudson and on a former industrial site. Once upon a time, the milk for the whole of Manhattan was processed here and delivered by rail from the south. Renzo Piano designed the plan for the new campus and the first 3 buildings. The square is dominated by the Neuroscience Center. The forum is located at the entrance to the campus. And right next to the Science Center, the architect has set the School of the Arts.
This is probably the smallest campus in the world for the moment, this one on West Harlem. But it's already containing the essence of what we can call a humanistic view of the world. You don't have to talk the language of history to make people trust in you. You can build dignity in some way, in a different way. Maybe, by example, by creating a sense of belonging, the sense of transparency, the sense of lightness, the sense of luminosity, or whatever.
The new forum was opened in autumn 2018. The venue will host events and debates on scientific and social issues in the 21st century. In addition to Renzo Piano, the president of the university will welcome Nobel Prize winners who will serve as mentors for major scientific research programs. Like its ancient Greek role model, the New Columbia aims to be an intellectual center for the people. It is to be their university. Everything on this campus is focused on change and the future.
But on the Manhattanville campus, we wanted to reflect the ways in which we see the world today. And that means a much greater sense of integration with the surrounding communities. There will be retail on the ground floor along Broadway and 125th Street. There will be no gates. People will be welcomed into the spaces, the public spaces, and into the ground floor of floors of the buildings.
The New Columbia aims to be an integral part of the city and society, and architecture plays a vital role in this. It should make the creation of knowledge visible to all, reminding us of how indispensable it is if we are to meet the challenges of today and tomorrow.
It is a design, it is a function, it is an aesthetic that is meant to be of our time and equally magnificent to that on Morningside Heights.
I like to call a white factory because a factory that is not polluting, it's made of ideas. Making building like a factory is quite compelling idea in terms of flexibility, in terms of clarity, in terms of functionality, because fundamentally a university is a factory of ideas.
The whole new campus looks like a laboratory. The buildings stand close together, and their spatial proximity is intended to promote creativity and exchange in the interests of knowledge. The fact that an art academy should be one of the foundations of a new university may come as a surprise, but there is a clear conviction behind it and a concrete plan for the future.
Well, this building is a dream for us, really. So it's, from our point of view, it is the perfect building, but it's also because of the relationship that we had with the architects and how carefully the building was thought about. Since it's small, we didn't want to waste 1 inch of it. So it works beautifully for us.
The campus is small, yet the vision behind it is immense. namely, to stimulate creativity in all directions and in dialogue with all disciplines, to make everything available so that answers can be found to the pressing questions of the 21st century.
Putting a School of the Arts building and an art venue at the entrance to that campus, which is what we are, really says to the public, we want you to come and participate in this new Columbia and new campus. Because I think there is this notion now in the world that these silos of discipline, this is over. The future can't be that, because we can't solve problems in the world with any one discipline. The problems are too complex. If you look at young artists, they're struggling with all of these ideas, and they're working across every form. No form is privileged. I think the arts are the perfect vehicle for that, because in a sense, the arts are about form, but not necessarily about content. Art can be about anything, and artists take up every social issue. I mean, the most important thing we can do for the next generation of young people is educate them to think. They can take that thinking into whatever they want, but if they can't think through a problem, they're useless as citizens in the world. How will they make decisions?
From the terrace at the Science Center, you can see the silhouette of Hudson Yards. The new campus is like the nucleus of a new city within a city, a modern, vital microcosm. This vision is not too far removed from what Hudson Yards wants to be. Manhattan's transformation has begun, and it is based on the simultaneous renewal of what has always been the core of urban culture: trade, education, art, and culture.
A great city is never finished. It's constantly evolving. It really is a platform for innovation and change.
Manhattan's plan for the future has so far focused on key strategic issues. All these projects, Hudson Yards, One Vanderbilt, the universities and cultural amenities, are privately funded. That makes the reconstruction of Manhattan very different from European or Asian planning. The future will show whether and to what extent all these projects not only change Manhattan, but also can serve as role models for intelligently planned cities of the 21st century.
You can't be looking backward. Yes, you have to be cognizant of your past, and you have to use that past as a competitive advantage to define your future, but you have to be adaptable and able to actually encourage change.
Manhattan is the quintessential embodiment of the 20th century city. Its rank is undisputed. 3 million people throng into Manhattan every day. They work, rush about, think, create. Unimaginable energy concentrated in one place. An agglomeration of vitality and people from all over the world.